Excellencies, dear colleagues, good afternoon to who is with us at the International Environment House. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is with us on WebEx or is now watching the video of the event. We have the pleasure to welcome you today for a new session of the Geneva Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogues, which have kept the international community in Geneva and beyond engaged on this topic since the end of 2020, making links with the United Nations Environment Assembly and other international processes. This third series of dialogues that kicked off in April, it is organized by the Geneva Environment Network in collaboration with the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention Secretariat, the Center for International Environmental Law, the Global Governance Center at the Graduate Institute, IUCN, Norway, Switzerland, the Forum on Trade, Environment and SDGs, known as TESS, and the University of Geneva. The United Nations Environment Assembly made history in March this year, as you all know, by adopting a resolution setting up the path to a global treaty to end plastic pollution. The resolution requests the convening of an Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment, during the second half of 2020, with the ambition of completing its work by the end of 2024. An ad hoc open-ended working group will convene in Dakar, Sénégal, from 30 May to 1st of June to prepare for the work of this Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Our event today aims at briefing our audience on the preparations for this meeting, which is taking place in less than 2 weeks now. I will have the pleasure to moderate this event and introduce the speakers when giving them the floor. Before we go into depth on the topic which we are addressing today, let me just remind you that the documents presented, the summary, as well as the video of the event will be made available on the webpage of this event. The link is being shared on the chat for who is with us online, and for the others, we will also share it on the screen later on. Throughout the event, those who are online can raise their questions by using the Q&A box. We will use your questions to feed the discussion during the part that we have allocated for questions and answers. And for the opening of this event, it is my pleasure to give the floor to the representative of Morocco, which has Morocco has the presidency of the next United Nations Environment Assembly. And so I'm turning to Abderrahim Ait Slimane, from the permanent mission of the Kingdom of Morocco in Geneva, which has joined us online. Abderrahim, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Diana, for inviting us to this briefing. And good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on where you are in the world. The permanent mission of Morocco is very glad to participate today to this third series of the Geneva Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogues. And there is no doubt that these dialogues will really facilitate further engagement and discussion among the stakeholders in international Geneva, and also address the plastic crisis and support coordinated approaches that can lead to more efficient decision making. Colleagues, as Diana stated in her opening introduction, the plastic pollution, as you all know, is a global problem, and that requires global action. Solutions require coordination, shared responsibility, and a collective approach. The ongoing work towards a new legally binding global agreement to end plastic pollution is important to our future. For us, Morocco, as the chair of UNIA, as the president of UNIA 6, the UNIA 5th was a historical success, as stated by Diana. Numerous groundbreaking resolutions were adopted by the Assembly. And aware of the challenges related to marine litter and plastic pollution can only be met within the framework of resolutely committed international cooperation, and taking into account its commitment and its active contribution to international process, Morocco has always supported the strengthening of global governance on marine litter and plastic pollution. And we are delighted today with the adoption of the resolution entitled Ending Plastic Pollution Towards an International Legally Binding Instrument, which is one of the key resolutions of the 5th United Nations Assembly. And also, we're happy to see that the open-ended ad hoc working group meeting will have its first meeting from 30th May to 1st June in Dakar. And we're sure that it will be an opportunity for us to prepare, to discuss and agree on the timetable and organization of the work of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, with the ambition of completing this comprehensive framework on plastic pollution by the end of 2024. Today, we reiterate the importance of translating the UNEA 5th resolutions, mainly the plastic one, into concrete actions. These actions cannot be achieved without multilateral cooperation and international solidarity in the fight against environmental challenges. In conclusion, I would like to say that the real work just began now. The next meeting in Dakar is a step forward in this process. It is imperative for us to work together on translating the resolution into concrete action, starting with those related to plastic pollution and chemical products and waste, believing that the solution advocated must be felt by the citizens of the world as their right to a sustainable environment. Morocco is determined to spare no effort and work with all stakeholders in order to consolidate the authority of UNEA as an institution seeking the global environmental agenda. Thank you so much for inviting us again to this briefing, and I would like to seek seek your indulgence. I have to leave in 30 minutes because I have another meeting, another important meeting physically this time. That's why I couldn't be with you today. I hope next time we'll be participating physically with you in your next series of meetings. Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you very much, Abderrahim, for welcoming our audience. And indeed, we have many more people online than we have in the room. People are still take this convenience of also attending, remaining. Yeah, I'm not going to comment, sorry. Let's move on the agenda. I have been mentioning that in all our meetings, we do efforts to make our events hybrid, and we still see that we have 90% of the audience online. Of course, many people are joining us from many parts around the world, but it's true that also even colleagues in Geneva, many of them are joining us online today. So we are moving with the agenda of this event. We are now addressing the preparations of this open and working group that is taking place in Dakar. And it's my pleasure to turn to my left to Brenda Kokuk, who is a program manager for the Circle of Excellence on Plastic Pollution at the United Nations Environment Program, who is involved in the preparations of what is going to happen in Dakar, and who will update you now on the preparations. Brenda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you for inviting UNEP today to sort of kick off this briefing. We really appreciate the GEN and the Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogues as a key means of informing people, and it's been nice to see how many people are actually participating in these globally, although it's led from Geneva. So thank you for that. As everyone is very aware, at every UN Environment Assembly since the first one in 2014, governments have adopted resolutions directly addressing marine litter and microplastics, as well as various other resolutions that are linked to the topic of plastic pollution. And today, we really are seeing the political messaging absolutely everywhere, and our resolution has helped with this. So Resolution 514, of course, is a landmark decision. It does request the UNEP Executive Director to convene an INC, an Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, to start its work during the second half of 2022 and completing by the end of 2024, which is a very ambitious timeline. And it also requested the Executive Director to convene an ad hoc open-ended working group, which will take place now from the 30th of May to the 1st of June to prepare for the work of the INC and ultimately the development of an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. So this meeting will be held in Dakar, and I'm glad to be partnering up with Mr. Sila here in presenting some of the aspects in planning for the OEWG. So our timeline has been super tight in preparing for this meeting, as the assignment was given to us at the 1st of March. And you can imagine the many details associated with it. So I just want to send a big shout out to all of you who've been involved in our process for being patient with us and for supporting us in getting this meeting off the ground. And we're looking forward to welcoming people in Dakar. So what will the INC consider? So it is based on a comprehensive approach, and it will address the full life cycle of plastic. And I've just listed a number of things here from paragraph 3 of the resolution, just to remind us that it will promote sustainable production and consumption. It will also consider technical and capacity means of implementation, as well as finance mechanisms. And it will also consider national action plans, data monitoring, reporting, and compliance. So there are a number of key things outlined here, and the resolution also specifies that we are to be considering legally binding and voluntary approaches in the mix. So that also leads us to how stakeholders engage in the process, as well as governments. So in terms of the logistics for the meeting, the actual meeting will be taking place from the 30th of May to the 1st of June. And on the 29th, the day pre-day, we will be having regional coordination meetings and multi-stakeholder dialogues. I'll present a bit more detail on that as we go through here. And the venue, of course, is in Dakar. Mr. Sila will be presenting a bit more detail there. It is also a hybrid format. I take note of Diana's comment of that hybrid meetings are more difficult to organize. So we are working hard on that, and we are working through the Interactio platform. The information is all available on the link, and maybe somebody could drop that link into the chat directly. That would be helpful. We currently have about 860 participants registered for the meeting, with about 35% of those participants face-to-face in Senegal. Registration closed yesterday. So in terms of the agenda, the key goal of this meeting is to prepare for the work of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. And there are 3 key things that are listed on the agenda for the meeting in these preparations. So timetable and organization of work for the INC, the draft rules of procedure for the INC, and the organization of a forum to exchange information and activities related to plastic pollution. So just to touch on those briefly, there is a document 3 on the website entitled The Approaches to the Work, which will support the timetable and organization of work discussion. That all of the documents, meeting documents proper, are available in English only on the website at the moment and should be posted in all languages by end of day tomorrow. For the draft rules of procedure for the INC, they are available as document 4. And they are based on past procedures. You will see many of the rules of procedure look familiar from the Minamata process, for example. It is a draft, and we hope that the rules of procedure can be finalized at the OAWG, and that the INC can adopt those rules of procedure quite quickly upon their commencement to get the work of the INC going. There is an information document that will be available on the organization of a forum. We are requested in the resolution to organize a forum in conjunction with INC 1, and we have provided some information. We will be providing some information on that in the document that will be made available. Just to outline, there are a set of multi-stakeholder dialogues lined up. They are open dialogues, so there will be an open link for those wishing to watch those dialogues live. If you miss the registration deadline for the meeting itself, there will be an open link placed on our website, and there are 4 sets of dialogues lined up. So all day Sunday, outlining the life cycle approach from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., followed by Monday from 2 to 2:45 Senegalese time, a just and inclusive transition to a plastic pollution-free economy. On the 31st, inspiring consumer action along the value chain. And then on the 1st of June, upscaling and redirecting finance. So all of those sessions will be also available on the Interactio platform and will have full interpretation. I just want to point out that the OEWG meeting itself will be following UNEA rules of procedure as a subsidiary body, and the participation will follow UNEA rules of procedure. The schedule is maybe a little hard to see, but it is available on the website. Sorry, just one second. Is available on the website, outlining where the dialogues fit in and the process. So at the moment, registration is open at 9 a.m. On Sunday morning for those wishing to attend the multi-stakeholder dialogues, and we are looking at a provision to try to open up registration on Saturday evening for an hour or two in order to help alleviate any lineups that might take place on Sunday. So look for that information on our website. We actually don't have the details sorted of that yet. You will note that on Sunday evening, there will be an informal technical briefing of sort on chemicals and its link to plastic pollution. I think you'll hear more from Switzerland as they brief in this session today. And the Secretariat is organizing a space on Sunday evening for an informal technical session where those who have ideas and submissions may wish to informally gather and share ideas and concepts together. The Secretariat will create that space for folks and is sending out more information about that, but it is not a structured panel session by any means. It's just a space for people to share ideas and progress together. Just another thing to point out is that the actual plenary will meet after morning and afternoon, Monday, Tuesday, and the meeting actually closes at 1 p.m. On Wednesday. Some of the delegates will be, of course, heading to Stockholm Plus 50 and on Thursday and Friday, and we wanted to create that space for that availability. There is the possibility of a field mission on Wednesday afternoon, and more information will be made available to you in due course on that. Finally, we just wanted to highlight 5 key points on the key outcomes of expected outcomes of the OEWG. So those are a recommendation on the rules of procedure for the INC, including guidelines on the composition of the Bureau for the INC, identification of candidates for the Bureau of the INC, hoping the regions can sort that at the actual OEWG, recommendations for timeline of the meetings and sequencings of work, also to provide guidance to the Secretariat in preparing for the first meeting. So that's on elements of the agenda, required documentation, and organization of the forum. And perhaps the request to the Secretariat to prepare some sort of draft elements and consideration of options for the structure of the future instrument so that it can be available at INC1 and we can readily and steadily implement our work. As you know, the timeline set to us is very tight. I just wanted to also highlight before I close that UNEP is developing a spotlight publication on plastic pollution. It is aiming to inform on the impacts of policy options along the life cycle. It is something that's currently under development by UNEP, and it's expected to be launched in the 3rd quarter. And the target audience will be to help the negotiation process and inform and technical experts as well as other actors along the way. So that is something that you can expect from UNEP as it's planning in terms of our own procedural processes. It's not a publication coming from the Secretariat of the INC by any means, but it is a UNEP aspect of development. Okay, so finally, just to close out on thanking the Jen again for this, I have included a picture of the King Fahd Hotel, the actual venue of the meeting, and so I think Mr. Sila will be presenting a little bit further in terms of what we can expect there. And I just also, this event is based here in Geneva, and I just wanted to put up this, the Geneva Catwalk series here. I don't know, those of you who are based here will have seen about 20 cats along the lake that have been there for the past couple of months. They are gone now. But one of the cats, I thought it's just a key indication of how much political messaging there is around the world right now. So Philip Galec, a Belgian artist, has prepared these large statues, and this cat, of course, is carrying the weight of plastic pollution of the world on his back. And I think we can just expect that as we move into these negotiations, and the open-ended working group will really be a landmark time for us to just actually stop, get started, and on this really important process with a really tight deadline. So thanks, Diana, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Brenda, for this complete presentation. And to complement what you have presented, we have the pleasure to have with us online Shaikh Sila, who is Director of the Ministerial Cabinet for Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal. You are currently not in Dakar, but you are with us here online. So it's my pleasure to turn to you and give you the floor. And you can turn on your camera.
Thank you very much, Diana, and good morning, everybody, to all present in this meeting, and hi, Brenda and Damari and others. I would like just to not come back to all the detail bring by Diana and Abdurrahman from Morocco. And for Senegal, as you know, the meeting will be in the King Fahd Palace, and you'll see some picture on this. In King Fahd Palace used to host the ozone COP in 2005, I think, and the POP's COP in 2009 or 10. It's a very nice area where you have the sea, golf, and many restaurants, and a good venue also with adequate equipment, enough meeting room that we can have for our big convenience for your stay in Dakar. For the organization, we will facilitate visa for those not having embassy or consulate in their country upon their arrival. But for this, we need to receive their copy of passport and their demand to be facilitated, and as well as their itinerary, so that we will send out a letter confirming that the visa will be made available upon arrival at the airport. At the airport, located in around 40 kilometers away of Dakar center, you will have transportation to the main hotel that we listed, or to any other hotel you have chosen from the internet. For the transportation also, we will assure transportation from listed hotel to the venue every day. And for the first day, there will be in Sunday, we will have the dialogue. I don't want to come back to this agenda. And the second day, after the opening ceremony, at the evening, we'll having a cocktail offered by Senegal, and in Pullman Hotel, located 16 kilometers away of this Dakar, is in downtown, again around close to the sea. All places in Dakar are around the sea, because Dakar is like we said in French, presque île. It's like island. And after this cocktail, for the organization, we will have the last day, the field visit on plastic. There are some ladies working to collect, create, recycle, and sell plastic. This location is in Thiès, the second ville of Dakar, of Senegal, close to Dakar, 70 kilometers away. There is highway, and transportation and accommodation will be facilitated. For the meeting, we have the timetable and the organization of work, but we can touch upon also any other agenda item that where we have time or we need to consider it, because we'll have 4 meetings. We think that we have time, but I think from my experience for ink, if you don't progress a lot in this first and second meeting, we're facing difficulty to organize extra meeting at the end. And but maybe during the diplomatic conference, the 5th meeting that we're having. Having said that, I think I have all these. I think we count also to have a big participation from the government, from the NGO, IGO, the private sector. All are involved in the negotiation because we need a very strong and committed international convention. And for that, we are all welcome in Dakar. And I thank you also again for this organization and to allow me to intervene in your meeting. I have another meeting now with the Secretariat to prepare for the Dakar. We have some detail to prepare. I will beg your indulgence to not be continuing with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. And you just mentioned the various stakeholders that will attend the meeting. And we have representatives from these stakeholders here in the room to whom we are now going to give the floor for them to provide us with their perspectives on this important upcoming meeting. And it's my pleasure to turn first to a member state. I have at my right Valentina Sierra from the Permanent Mission of Uruguay here in Geneva, who is very involved with the Chemicals and Waste Cluster, being a member of Bureau of some conventions and other bodies. So I will turn first to you, Valentina, for providing your perspectives on this upcoming meeting.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you to the Geneva Environment Network for the invitation and to all organizers. I heard there are plenty of them, so thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Indeed, this UNEA was a historic moment. It was the most successful UNEA, I can say, and also the media said so. And we agreed to start a process, to start in a negotiation process with the goal to complete our work by the end of 2024. It is indeed ambitious, but I'm positive and I think we will make it. What is our goal? Is to agree on a legally binding agreement on plastic pollution that addresses the full life cycle of plastic and includes the marine environment. I would like to start by highlighting the main elements that this resolution include. First of all, the recognition of the problem. That is an urgent problem and their negative impacts on the environment, on the social and economic dimension, and also the social and economic dimension of the sustainable development. Also, it is very important to highlight that is included in the resolution the prevention of plastic pollution, the prevention aspect, and is also related to the risks to human health and the adverse effects on human well-being and the environment. It also includes both binding and voluntary approaches, as it was said before. And it's also included an urgent need, an urgent message, the need to strengthen the science policy interface. And this also opens the door to establish a scientific committee under the future agreement that will be discussed during the INCs. We could use as an example the CRC in Rotterdam Convention and the POPROC in Stockholm Convention. So we do indeed have many conventions with a scientific body. Also, it highlights the urgent need to strengthen the global coordination, cooperation, and governance to take immediate action towards the long-term elimination of plastic pollution. Also, it includes sustainable alternatives and technologies, highlighting the need for enhanced international collaboration to facilitate the access to technology, capacity building, and scientific and technical cooperation. It also it includes references to sustainable production and consumption of plastics, sound management of waste, and circular economy. It welcomes also the efforts made and it recognizes the need for complementary actions and a coherent and coordinated long-term global vision. That is very important to highlight because, just to give you an example, under the BRS conventions, specifically under the Basel Convention, we have we have been working for years on the plastic issue. We have amended annexes that were adopted on last COP in 2019. And also we have the plastic waste partnership. So it's also very important that the INC take into account all the work that under the Basel Convention is done and the potential that this convention has. Then it's also fundamental for us to share with you that this important addition in the resolution is the social aspect of the problem, because the resolution recognized the significant contribution made by workers and in informal and cooperative settings. This is very supported by Uruguay, not only in the negotiations, but also in the ILO. Well, also there is a need for capacity building and technical and financial assistance to implement effectively the agreement, of course. We need a financial mechanism to support the implementation of the instrument. And also there is a need to increase the knowledge through awareness raising, education, and information exchange. It is also very important to highlight the private sector involvement that is indeed included in this resolution, and the initiation of a multi-stakeholder action agenda. And now, if I may quickly go to the open-ended working group and what is expected. Well, I don't want to repeat what Brenda already informed, but yes, we will discuss the rules of procedure. We should define the structure of the process, the timeline, the formal meetings, as well as the intersessional process, that it will be heavy because we have 2 years of work. And then also it's important to highlight the multi-stakeholder dialogues that will start on 29th of May and will continue during the open-ended working group with diverse thematic panels that you can find on the open-ended working group website. So we encourage all stakeholders to participate on these dialogues. It's fundamental, the participation of the private sector, to have a deep understanding on how the plastic sector works, how the life cycle is like, where the producers and consumers are located, as well as the geographic scope involved in the management of plastic waste. Also, we would like to encourage the participations of NGOs without restrictions, of the BRS and the SICOM Secretariat, of the academia, of the scientists, of the health and labor sector, of workers and informal workers, and youth representatives. We will also we would like to invite you to a technical briefing that we are organizing jointly with IPEN, Switzerland, and Senegal. It will be a technical briefing on health, chemical, plastic, and a non-toxic circular economy on May 29. And finally, my final words, well, we think it is important to have a broad INC bureau with 10 members, 10 representatives, 2 from each region, because as we know, in each region we have also sub-regions, and it's important to have equal representation. Also, we need to define the structure of the agreement, considering how the agreement could be implemented more quickly, because as we mentioned, it is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed. Also, it is important to highlight that the goal of the agreement will be key, because there we will set the ambitions of our agreement. Also, we need to define how we will address the hazardous substances that are in plastic, and the importance to identify the most hazardous ones, to address them since the design stage, and evaluate how to phase down or phase out those hazardous chemicals. Also, we need a better recycling process, a better circularity, and if we remove, we phase down or we phase out these hazardous substances, we will have a better and non-toxic circularity and less impact in the environment and in human health. We also have to prevent the releases of toxics to the air, water, and soil, as well as the exposure of workers and consumers. We would like to highlight also that we need to include the protection of human rights in the text, in the agreement, human rights to health, human rights to life, human rights to a healthy environment, among others. Final words, national plans are fundamental for us. They are useful not only for national and local governments, but also for the private sector, for cooperatives, for diverse organizations, is also a guideline of how all these stakeholders could act. But nevertheless, we should not limit the implementation aspect just to national plans. We should have a broader approach, because it's a global issue and many stakeholders are involved. Finally, we would like to highlight the importance of to promote education programs, to raise awareness and to achieve social changes regarding consumption, recycling, and circular economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for these comprehensive perspectives and thoughts. And you have mentioned a lot of topics that are, of course, of great interest for stakeholders in Geneva, because those are topics that are really discussed in Geneva also. We were supposed to have a representative from the Pacific region with us, but it's very late night in the Pacific, and I suppose his alarm didn't work, so we might bring him in if he wakes up later. And so it's now my pleasure to turn to David Azoulay, who is representing here the civil society. David is the managing attorney of the CIEL office in Geneva and also the director of its environmental health program. And David is not only representing here the Center for International Environmental Law, but also the broader civil society community, and he will explain that better than me. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you very much to the GEN for the organization of this event. The GEN has been very instrumental in supporting the outcome that we've managed to get so far in engaging a broad cross-section of the international community, which I think has been really important and probably critical in getting to the point that we are now. So I'm very glad to see GEN continuing to play this role. One of the advantage of speaking after so many good speakers is that they've already said most of the key elements. So I'm not going to repeat everything. It's also very satisfying for me to see that among the different stakeholders, at least those that we've heard so far, the expectations from the meeting are very similar and are the same, which usually sets us up for a good outcome and a good process. So as Brenda was saying before, our expectations for the outcome of the OEWG are pretty similar. We're looking at recommendation for the rules of procedure. We're looking at identification of possible candidates for the INC Bureau, timeline recommendations, and a request to the Secretariat to prepare some draft element and proposed option to structure the treaty and discussion. In that respect, I do want to share a few elements, a few perspectives from the civil society. The first aspect I would like to mention is, as you mentioned before it, Brenda, in the lead up to this OEWG, I think the process has been lucky enough to see a very large engagement of various sectors of society through civil society. And that, I think, is a very clear indication of the expectations from the rest of the world, of the momentum that exists behind this treaty, and will be very important to sustain in that respect. So indeed, the civil society organizations have been organizing and coordinating for many years, have supported this process, have supported governments and UN secretariats to get to this process. And the expectation is that we can continue to improve and be constructive participants to this process, because I don't believe that we will get the treaty we need to end plastic pollution without a very large, transparent, and active engagement from a cross-section of civil society. In that respect, CIEL has just published a document with a number of recommendations about how to ensure that particular participation through the INC process. We're also making specific recommendation in relation to how the rules of procedure should be drafted in that respect. We believe that there are some very good examples from past negotiations, whether it is from Minamata or from specific regional instruments such as Escazú or ARIS, that all provide best practices, but that also provide for international obligations for the parties to these conventions to support and strengthen public participation in these processes. Another element that we believe will be extremely important in preparing the INC negotiation is to identify, as was mentioned before, clear objectives and target taking into account the evolving international agreements on climate, biodiversity, and chemicals. And also, and this is something that we've heard repeated throughout the negotiations, we want to ensure that those objectives and targets are science-based. And in that respect, very often, when reference are made to science-based, to basing decisions on science, is to highlight the lack of information, the uncertainty that exists, and the need for more research. And while we indeed still need a lot of research on many aspects of the plastic life cycle, we also are seeing a very consistent and multiplying output coming from the scientific community about what it is that we need to effectively end plastic pollution. And in that respect, capping or trying to reduce plastic production comes out as a very clear requisite for the world to have a chance to address and to end plastic pollution. And so we're very much counting on the negotiations to be grounded in science and also look at these, look in particular at these aspects. So I'll maybe two more buckets of recommendations or perspectives that we have around this. One is about the timelines and the recommendation. While we are indeed very much looking forward to see this timeline, and we believe that it will be important to not only have a timeline of when the meetings, when and where the meetings will happen, but also to start thinking about the sequencing of the negotiations. And in particular, we believe that it will be extremely important from very early on to agree on a number of key definitions in order to allow for the negotiation to proceed constructively and not having to constantly go back or question what is exactly the scope of the provisions that we're discussing. So we believe that it will be important in the timeline to consider these particular elements. When I mentioned earlier that we expect the OEWG to come up with a request to the Secretariat to prepare elements for consideration by the IMC about proposed option to structure the treaty and discussion draft element. In that respect, we believe that it will be important for the Secretariat to take into consideration in agreement and in implementing the UNEA resolution, the scientific evidence of the harm caused by plastics, including on human health and biodiversity loss, the roles of chemicals and additives used in plastic and their impacts throughout the life cycle of plastics. Of course, sustainable production and consumption, in particular with regard to production caps and restrictions, with further phase out of toxic chemicals used for plastic production, as was mentioning before. The environmental and human health risk from substitute materials, such as bioplastic and plant-based material. So we don't just come up with provisions that will facilitate the replacement of a single-use product with another single-use product, which really, I think we all agree, is something that we would want to avoid. Coherent and synergistic approach in developing the new global agreement in collaboration with existing international agreements. I mentioned that before. And then the two final points that very often are left towards the end of negotiations for these kinds of treaty, but which we believe will be instrumental and really important to tackle on head on and to have a very clear recognition that these need to be addressed very early on. The first one is the development of a dedicated financial mechanism that should include new and additional sustainable financial resources for the treaty implementation. And that, again, the temptation is usually to leave this difficult money discussion towards the end of the negotiations. We believe that it should be tackled head on and should be inserted at the heart of the discussion. And then finally, an element that is also often left for future discussion is something about compliance and implementation mechanism. We all want to avoid having a beautiful treaty on paper that is not implemented. And we've seen that happen before. And so we want to make sure that not only do we develop a comprehensive, ambitious treaty that adopts the adequate provisions to end plastic pollutions, but also to effectively ensure that this treaty will be implemented and that there are necessary compliance mechanism and technical and financial resources will be made available for all to participate. Thank you very much, and also want to take the Gen for having made available quite a number of preparatory and background document that we and some of our colleagues have produced, whether it is comparative tables of rules of procedures from various instruments or an analysis of the UNIA mandate with clear indication of what the INC should take out of those and should be discussing. So all of those documents are now available on the GEN website, and we thank very much Diana and the GEN for making those available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Indeed, you will find those documents on the webpage of this event. Some of the links have been shared on the chat for who is with us online. So for who is on the room, visit the webpage of the event. It's now my pleasure to turn to my left. We will also have perspectives from the private sector, the business sector, on this upcoming meeting. And we have with us Delphine Garin from the World Business Council on Sustainable Development. Delphine is a manager on plastics and packaging at the WBCSD. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Thanks for inviting the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Very nice to be here in person. Maybe I will just start with a few words about WBCSD because I'm not so sure everyone is familiar with WBCSD. We are a Geneva-based organization with offices in New York, Delhi, Amsterdam, London, Singapore, and Beijing. And we bring together more than 200 multinational companies under our Vision 2050 of 9 billion people living well within the limits of the planet. And we work collectively with our members to accelerate the transition to a net zero, nature positive and equitable future. And we are structured around those imperatives and also pathways, including one on products and materials, where we have our circular projects around electronics, metrics, and plastics and packaging. So the plastic pollution topic is very relevant for us because it really touches upon our key imperatives around climate, nature, and equity. I will move to next slide just to show you our members. So more than 200 companies. We have companies that produce plastics, that manufacture plastic products, that use plastic, that recycle plastics. So really members across the plastic value chain and from different sectors, consumer brands, food and agriculture, mobility, built environment, energy, and more. So at WBCSD, we have already set up a working group with all the companies that are impacted, interested in this topic around the UN Treaty on Plastic Pollution. So we really want to mobilize business as much as possible. We also have actually a network of 70 partners, actually of partners in 70 countries, so in national jurisdiction, that can provide also the more localized insight, the local perspective. As we said, that it was important to have also the national perspectives. I will just move to this slide, which is basically the perspective from the private sector. Of course, WBCSD is not claiming to be the only business voice out there. And we also, of course, discuss and try to collaborate with the other organizations out there, whether it's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, whether it's WWF, who has done a very great job into bringing the business voice through their campaign advocating for this UN Treaty on Plastic Pollution. So I just wanted to highlight 3 elements that you can see on this slide. And the first one is about the cross-value chain dialogues along the INC process. As you said very well, David, about science that needs to tell us the way forward and what needs to be done. And we know there is no silver bullet in solving this issue. And we know that the resolution promotes sustainable consumption and production with a circular economy approach. It means upstream, downstream interventions, and basically business will be key in the implementation of this global agreement. So that's really what we want to bring to those discussion, negotiation, is really show the collaboration across the value chain that will be very important in those discussions. Just to give you an example, if we look at brands that we need to increase recycled content into their products, it means that you need investment into waste management infrastructure so that you can guarantee high quality actually recyclates. But even before that, you need to make sure that you collect the plastic waste, and you need to ensure that you have feedstock to create those recyclates. And of course, even better, if you have products that are designed to be recycled in practice. So policies will play a key role in enabling this circular economy, and really business can help provide the insight, to provide the understanding of the market realities, to ground the discussion in business reality. What are the innovations that are needed? What are the new business models that need to be created? What investments need to be enabled, and basically how to make the value chains ready. And maybe also a discussion around what makes sense at the global level and what makes sense at the more national levels. So all this to say basically that we will be happy to provide a platform for business and policymakers to road test the proposed measures and analyze data gaps. So we would be happy to join the multi-stakeholder action agenda. I put format with a question mark because I think that's still to be determined how it will be. But more than happy to provide a space for discussion with our members across the plastic value chain. Second topic is around metrics, reporting and disclosure. An important part of the negotiation will be around the standardization of metrics, reporting and disclosure for countries. And we believe that this represents a good opportunity to align countries and corporates on the metrics and methodologies that are necessary to achieve the goals, so that business progress is recognized and measured. So we have established some work in this area at WBCSD in our Sustainable Plastics and Packaging Value Chains project. And we would like to provide also this input to the discussion and to the negotiation. We are currently working on the landscape analysis of existing metrics and methodologies that are used by business to report on plastic usage and fate, to identify the gaps and opportunities for convergence. So there will be a consultation on this document, so happy to share more in due time. But the idea would be to contribute in this area as well. And we know that there are also other organizations that have done a lot of work in this area, and the idea is really to work collaboratively. The last point is around circularity and sustainability. And here maybe to go back to the point of the resolution on sustainable plastics, sustainable production and consumption of plastics and the circular economy approach. I just wanted to flag this work that we published a few weeks ago, which is called Sphere, which is basically to support companies in their decision on packaging with metrics to assess the environmental impact of packaging. And you can see here the different guiding principles that we have come up with. And it's really to provide a holistic way to look at production, end of use and end of life of packaging, to address the full life cycle of plastics and to really reconcile circularity with sustainability. And we thought it would be maybe an interesting perspective to have into the discussion. So we wanted to flag this piece of information, this report that we published a few weeks ago. Voilà. We will be in Dakar together with my colleague, Michael, Director for Circular Economy at WBCSD. So happy to meet you there if you are there. Otherwise, happy to connect online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Delphine. You all had a lot to say, so somehow good that Anthony didn't wake up in the Pacific Islands. We have received, we have 200 people who are online with us. We still have concluding remarks from Switzerland, but before we still have a few minutes to go. And before I give the floor to Switzerland, we would like to address some of the questions that came in the chat, but to also give a chance for who is in the room with us to raise a question. So I first turn to who is in person here. Is there any question that you would like to ask our panel? Yes, we have. If you could introduce yourself, and then I will bring up some of the questions that were in the chat.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Raina Gilbert. I'm representing the Pew Charitable Trust, and we have a project on plastic pollution. And so I'm here just because we're engaged in this and we're very interested in seeing an outcome. This is our second phase of our project. The first phase culminated in a report called Breaking the Plastic Wave, which I hope some of you have heard about, and if not, I'm happy to send it around. And so the second phase of our work is really going to be multi-phased. So we are working with the EU in a process to consult regarding microplastics. And so that's one stream of work. But we're also working with the WTO, because the WTO has an informal dialogue on plastics. And at Pew, we have another campaign that has worked closely with the WTO, so we're continuing with that relationship. We're also looking at in-country modeling, using a version of the global model that was in the Breaking the Plastic Wave report, but tailored for countries. So we are looking to partner with countries to model their plastic life cycle and to help provide recommendations for policies to reduce plastic on a country level. And we're also looking at disclosure and reporting systems and finding ways to build that similar to the carbon disclosure and reporting system, making something like that for plastics as well. So I don't really have a question, but just wanted to introduce myself, and I'm happy to talk more about any of the work that I described, and it's nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Do you want to react to that, David, or should I proceed? So let me just take some of the questions that came out, or remarks that came also online. And there is with us online the acting executive secretary of the Abidjan Convention, who would like to enter in contact with you, Delphine, so I will share the contacts later on. One of the questions that came on logistical issues was about visas and other logistics. I have shared some information on visas. And on logistics, the presentation that was made will be available on the webpage of this event. And we will make sure that some of the links, you have also the links there to the meetings, the webpage of the meetings, where you have all the documents of the meetings, including the documents on logistics. So you should be able, through our website and the webpage of this event, to find the most of these things. There's a question from Ina Balik, who works with plastic credits, and she's asking if the plastic credits as financing mechanism will be discussed in Dakar. I first turn to David, and then if anybody wants.
So the short answer is no, it will not be discussed in Dakar, because Dakar will not be discussing the substance. Dakar will be setting up the structure for the negotiation. Will plastic credits be part of the financing discussion along the next 2 years in the INC? It might very well be, and this might actually be part of some of the discussion in Dakar, how we frame the financing discussion. But the short answer is no, it will not be discussed in Dakar, because this is not what the Dakar meeting is about.
Then let me take another logistical question. Somebody who has registered for a side event, a UN event, and has not received any links to join. So you told us before that the registration is closed. Maybe some remarks on that from you, Brenda?
Sure. So yes, the registration deadline has closed, but for the multi-stakeholder dialogues, we will put a public access to the link for the dialogues on our website, and that'll be communicated to folks so that you can actually join them from the link that will be on our website.
Indeed, there is also a web page dedicated on the UNEP website for this. I don't see any other question in the room, so I propose that I see a new question coming up, but as you heard from David, what are going to be the main objectives of the Dakar meeting, I propose that we move to the closing of this event, but before we move to Switzerland, just turning to my colleagues on the right and on the left. You heard your other colleagues. Is there any reaction you would have or would like to add before I turn to Damaris? No? Okay, very good. So this is a briefing. It's not, so please go ahead, Damaris. Thank you very much, Damaris Carnal, sorry, the focal point of Switzerland for the United Nations Environment Programme, who is leading on this topic for Switzerland. Damaris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and let me also add my voice to all of those who thank you for all the hard work. We know that you're instrumental in many ways, and I think today's event and the whole series of Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogues is also a testimony of your work and the importance of also bringing us together. So I think this is again a great opportunity, and it's also heartening to see that after UNEA, which was also such an important moment in this process, it is also great that now we're entering another phase that will, I hope, also conclude with the same spirit that we had in Nairobi, but we also have some hard work ahead. I will not make more publicity on the technical briefing that was already mentioned by Brenda and Valentina that we were also co-organizing. We'll make sure that the information will be on the website of the GEN, but also making its way on the official or unofficial program for Dakar. I also want to thank all the panelists and participants. I think it's also great that politically we also have the blessing and support of the UNEA presidency. And I want to thank Morocco. Even though we didn't have the SIDS perspective with us, of course, they continue to remain a very important actor, and we look forward to also have them at the table and make sure their perspectives and priorities are taken into account. I think it was mentioned a number of times, pressure was very important. So also congratulations to Senegal and to the Secretariat for the hard work. We know that some documents are still coming, so please continue to check the website. They're doing their best. We almost have all the information, and this is also important. But I also wanted to give some maybe, my key takeaways from this event and also for Dakar. We need to set up a good process so that we can create enabling environment to have successful negotiation. And setting up a good process, I think, will mean that we need to have an efficient and very competent secretariat. There's a lot of substantive work and support that will need to be done. We also need a strong bureau and presidency. This is also something that will be discussed in Dakar. I think David also referenced the rules of procedure. We also need to make sure that rules of procedure will help us and not make our life more difficult in the process going ahead. Maybe one point we keep on saying, that the process is very ambitious. The timeline is really going to be a challenge, but I think we also need to remember that speed should in no way be at the cost of ambition. The priority is to have a treaty that makes a difference. If it's going to be an empty shelf, it also doesn't make sense just to conclude in 2024. One thing, because we're also going to discuss the timeline, I think a lesson we learned ending UNEA in beginning of March and now going to Dakar end of May, 3 months is really not a long time. And as it was mentioned, we're doing more procedure than substance at this stage. So I think when we will design also the timeline, we need also to realize that we need sufficient time to prepare, not only the Secretariat, us member state, the stakeholders. We will need, and some of you already referenced to this, there need to be also intersessional work. If we want to have meaningful session of negotiation, we need to be ready, and we need to take this into account. And I think one point that Ciel also mentioned is it's not only the timeline that we need to discuss in Dakar, is also the organization of work, is also the building blocks. What is it we need to, how we are going to structure our work? I think this is also important to make sure that we have then the right expertise at the table, because it might not be the same experts. We're talking, the scope is immense, and it's probably not the same industry that needs to be there at all moments, even within an organization or within a government, it's not the same. So this is also, it's process, but it's also linked to substance. The second point is, I think it's clear that we need to deepen our common knowledge on plastic. Valentina raised some very good questions. I'm not sure that we have an answer. I think one of the challenges we face in this area is that we're a bit overwhelmed by the number of publications. Again, today, I was like, oh, my to-do list is becoming bigger by the minute. At the same time, it's great. But we cannot read and process everything. So I think now it's also a plea to all of you, to all stakeholders, to the Secretariat. I think we have almost everything is out there. It just needs to be repackaged or revamped in a way that it will be useful for negotiator. It's clear that people like me will need to enhance their knowledge, but it's also clear that I'm not going to become an engineer or plastic engineer. This is not my job. I think I would do a very poor job, but I need to better understand what is the plastic that, for example, is not recyclable and should therefore not be in the circular economy approach. I need to know what plastic is harmful for health or for the environment, but I need to have scientific basis on this, because otherwise it's going to be my opinion against someone else. So when we're going to enter a difficult negotiation, we need facts, and I think all of you need to help us get this fact. I was also very interested by this spotlight publication that Brenda mentioned. And lastly, I think we also, process will not always be easy. We also need to remember that, while we're here, Brenda referenced all this past work. It has been a long journey, and I think we need to remember that the reason why we decided to go for a legally binding instrument is because the approaches were too fragmented, that there was a common recognition that we had legal gaps, and also that voluntary approaches were not bringing us to where we are. So we cannot redo the conversation and only go about voluntary approaches. The private sector has also said they need more coherence, harmonization, and some clear global rules. And I think this is our raison d'être, and we should not keep that focus. So I think it's great to see that there's interest. It also means that there's pressure. Pressure needs to continue on governments. I think you know how this works, and you can count on the support of Switzerland. We're also very happy to have such a broad expertise here in Geneva from international organizations, MEAs, civil society, the private sector getting engaged, and you can count on us to make sure that we can bring this Geneva expertise through Gen and also to support this process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Damaris, for these excellent concluding remarks. I still have a few announcements to make, so if our audience who is online could stay with us and in the room. Just first, starting by thank all our panelists, those who are with us here in the room and online with us, but also the attendees here in the room and the numerous attendees that are or were with us online. And also the numerous people who also help in setting up the session of today. And wanted to bring to your attention the next sessions of the Geneva Plastic Pollution Dialogues. You know that the Conference of the Parties of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions are taking place in Geneva in June, in less than 1 month from now. And at the COPs, there will be a plastic forum from 8 to 10 of June. And within the plastic forum, there are various events, including 2 of the Geneva Plastic Pollution Dialogues co-organized with IPEN. And one of them is actually a remake with a few more actors of one of the events that will take place in Dakar. It's the one on health that you have mentioned, Valentina. And there is a second one that you can see now on the screen. And with that, I think it's now time to close this event. And thank you very much for making the effort of being here with us. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
And for those who are interested, we have other discussions ongoing. We have the UN Ocean Conference with 2 more sessions, the Geneva Blue Talks next week. The Tuesday session will be on fisheries subsidies, and we will have a high-level session for which the special envoy of the UN Secretary General will be with us, which is the following Tuesday. And we have next week an interesting event on the climate tipping points, a proposition of a report that Switzerland would like IPCC to make in its next cycle with Professor Stocker here at the International Environment House and online. Thank you.
Bye.